Hi everyone, happy Money Monday. It is Sharktress, financial Sharktress, Galit Sadiq, here to talk to you this week a little bit about negotiation and haggling. Um, it's something that not everyone feels comfortable with. I mean, I'm a big fan of always negotiating, but there are some things where the negotiation is not going to go in your favor, and sometimes you just need to drop out. So, I want to give you kind of a few examples on different things you can negotiate. I mean, obviously, from like online stores, things like that have set prices, you're not really going to be able to negotiate unless you reach out to the vendor directly. It doesn't usually make sense for them to negotiate, especially when you're buying a product online, um, because they have very set costs and they know how much they need to make. And they know how much their profit margin is, and it's going to be difficult for them to make a custom pricing for you. When you're in front of somebody, however, and again, in your regular retail store, especially like a corporate retailer, you're not going to be able to negotiate pricing. But, I am a fan of negotiation, like definitely when you're on vacation, if you're in souvenir shops, things like that, that's where you can test out your negotiating skills. But what I want you to remember when you go into these negotiations, what is fair for you and what is fair for that other person, right? Because in a negotiation, you are operating with only half of the knowledge. They know what their bottom price is, you know what your willing to pay price is, and you meet somewhere in the middle. I learned actually when I was doing my Goldman Sachs program, the 10K program with Goldman Sachs. We had an entire day on negotiation where we actually did these exercises. And what I found was something that I didn't actually think was possible, that some people were so caught up in the negotiation and didn't know how to negotiate. And also, the confrontation was so much for them that they ended up negotiating and going with a loss, right? Like they sold below what their bottom price was because they got talked over in the negotiation. And on the one hand, for the buyer, right, that could be great because you are getting it at below rock bottom price, but that item is not going to be sustainable, right? You are not going to be able to get that multiple times because they are selling below what they feel comfortable selling for. There's going to be frustration involved in the purchase. There's not going to be a way for you to do that morally, ethically, multiple times. So you want to get the most amount of information that you possibly can when you start off negotiations and during negotiations, right? So you want to also be in tune to the other person and what their needs are and what they're struggling with. I do this a lot, especially. So I'll tell you, especially with like this wedding stuff, I have negotiated with a lot of different vendors and tried to figure out what their rock bottom, what my willingness to pay is, and it's worked out really well for me. There are times though where I feel like this must be said. There are times where your number will just never be close enough to their number, and you have to be okay with that, and you have to be okay with walking away. That is the only way that you can operate in a way that is good for you and is in a way that is good for them. Like I just had something come up actually today where I have a very small micro wedding happening, right? It's at the end of the month, and I have been communicating with this vendor for a month and a half just to get 2 kosher meals for people. And, I guess I attempted to speak to them multiple times, and they just were very vague about pricing. And I knew that they were the only kosher option in Sedona. And what happened was today they sent me a proposal for $100 a person. So that's $200 for 2 meals, when I am paying for 25 meals a total of $400. So I didn't even like, that is where the negotiation is ending for me, because I just did not feel like their number was anywhere close to my number. And the product that I was getting for $100 was, I was bringing my own plates and I was getting a product that I could make in my own kitchen for less than $20 total, right? We're talking about a salad, a pasta, and a hummus wrap for 2 people. Like, that was not, I knew that my number and their number were so far off that it just didn't even make sense for me to negotiate. Yeah, Jenny is saying kosher food will always be more expensive. Yes, it will. It might be more expensive, but I got, if I was in Phoenix or anywhere else, I could have done this at $50 a plate and I would have been fine. I would have been like, yes, it's kosher food. I will pay the extra money to not have to do this. At this point, my mother and I have decided to cook those 2 meals on our own before the wedding, because it just doesn't make sense. We don't have it in the budget to pay $200. It's just not even fine dining experiences where you have a waiter are not $100 a person, especially not like we're talking about a wrap with some hummus in it, a salad. Like, it just didn't even make sense to negotiate with that vendor. That's not always going to be the case. Like, I will tell you, last week I had a negotiation with a prospective client, and I gave them my number, and in all of my yeah, Jenny, you would have thought steak or brisket. Yes, and this is a vegan wedding. I'm like, you're not going to charge me $100 for a wrap. That's not cool, It just it just didn't even make sense to like keep going in that discussion. I was just like, we are so far off from being anywhere close to the number that it just doesn't make sense. And I don't want to devalue their work, and I don't want them to devalue, to feel frustrated and not give me a good product. And I think that's the line that you have to toe, is making sure that everybody gets what they need. There's no devaluing happening on either side. And then you guys can make a deal that really works for both of you. So I'll tell you, like, in my negotiation, I had a client that I spoke to last week, a prospective client, and I gave them my number. And I will tell you, a lot of times I put in a little bit extra wiggle room because I know that people will negotiate with me. And I gave them different options. And the person came back to me that it was a little bit too much, and they gave me what their budget was. And I was able to customize my offer so that it felt good for both of us. And I think that's the key, right? With being able to haggle, it for both people. One person cannot feel like they're giving more than they can. It just won't work. You won't get a good product. You won't get what you need. It won't be sustainable in any way, especially if you want to have an ongoing relationship. So when you go into negotiations, I want you to think, what is your number? What are you willing to pay? And then I also want you to think on the side of the other person. what is their number? What is their bottom line? What is your, like, you should have 4 numbers. You're willing to pay top dollar, your bottom line number, the other person, what you think they are willing, their top number is, and what you think their bottom line is. And so a lot of times there's a different schools of thought of who should give the number first. So what I will say is, if you are selling, right, you want to anchor people at your number. So when you're selling something, let's say your product, your service, you would like to get $1,000 for this particular service. Okay. Now you don't know yet what their budget is. And as long as, a lot of people think like, I should let them say the number first, because then I know what their budget is. I don't want to miss out on extra money. I don't want you to think about missing out on extra money. I want you to think about what is good for you. What will you be happy with, right? So let's say I want $1,000. If I anchor that person at 1,500, let's say, or $1,200, I'm showing where my range is. And maybe they'll come down $100, $200, and I'll be able to get it there. Now, if you let them speak first and they start the negotiation at $400, it is way harder for you to get up to your $1,000 number. The only way to do that is to re-anchor them at a higher price. So let's say what you want is $1,000. They just came to the table with $400. What you need to do is immediately re-anchor, right? You have to build the value in their eyes and then re-anchor them at a higher price point. So I'd go to $1,500. I'd say, listen, $400 doesn't cut it. These are the things that go into making it. I'm happy to, if it's something like, Jenny, I know you used to do these amazing murals, right? Like, these are the different paints that I have to buy. This is how much they cost. This is how much an hour of my time costs. Really show them, explain to them the value, right? You don't have to tell them the exact numbers on how much you purchase the things for, but show them the value and be like, you know what? I'm more than happy to tell you the brand of paint I use, and you can do it yourself, but you won't have the experience, the all of the things that I put into my skills, right? So, a lot of people do this with like construction, right? Like, yes, technically the cost of the wood and the materials might be way cheaper than what you're paying for the construction work, but you are paying for the skills and the experience of the person making the craft, making the, constructing the cabinet or whatever it is you're paying for. So what you have to do is, they came at a low price. You want a price that's like, they came in at 400, you want 1,000, you need to re-anchor them. You need to say, I can do it for 1,500. Now you've re-anchored, instead of trying to negotiate up in small amounts from 400, you have set the bar high. And now they have to, it's on them, the onus is on them to bring the bar back down, and you guys can settle at somewhere around 1,000. That is why it's so important to try to figure out what are the numbers that you are comfortable with. What are the numbers? Because the best negotiations are when both parties are happy with the result. Both parties feel satisfied with the result. Both parties get what they want. Yeah. So Jenny is saying she barely made anything off that mural. It was more exposure and the happiness of doing the mural, but she should have charged more, and she was young and didn't know better. Yes, so that is something that I see over and over, right? Like, we do things for exposure, and then we do it in kind of detriment to ourselves. So making sure that you are happy with whatever the outcome is very, very important. Making sure that you can live. There are so many things that I have done for free for exposure. I will say that right off the bat. But what I gained from it made sense to me, right? The experience that I got from it made sense for me to do it. So it has to make sense for you. It has to make sense for both parties in the negotiation. Like, there are so many things that we can negotiate. We can, by all means, go and get discounts on your cable bills, on your internet, on anything that you possibly can. I'm always for attempting it. Just know what you want. Go into it knowing what you want. You can negotiate so many things. Again, like corporate retailers, very hard to negotiate. You're not going to be able to negotiate. You can, however, try to work with coupons and discount codes and promo codes, and that's a different thing. But when you're dealing with different services, like I will tell you, even for the wedding, also including third parties to help you negotiate can also, get you a long way. So for the wedding, I had to get a shuttle, a 25-person shuttle, because I'm getting married in the middle of Red Rocks in Sedona, and there's no parking there. And, my guests have to park somewhere else and then get shuttled in, and they get shuttled to the reception. I went to probably like 3 different shuttle companies, 3 or 4 different shuttle companies. And I saw what rates I could get, and they were coming in very, very high. What I did, though, was another thing that I strongly suggest for anyone getting married is I hired a day of coordinator who had contacts in these companies and gives them repeat business. And she negotiated on my behalf and got me a deal. She got me less than the lowest price that I had gotten quoted for. And I'll just give you like the costs. Like, it was $450. I was going to get like I think a 12 or 14 person van that would have to make multiple trips. Plus, I had to include a driver's tip and other stuff. She was able to get me a 25-person shuttle for $425 that included the driver's gratuity. Like, there are deals to be had. Sometimes you're not the best person to negotiate, right? You have to think about who has leverage, who works with these people all the time, who can get you what you need in the best deal. So knowing your numbers, knowing what you're comfortable paying, and knowing what kind of leverage you hold is really important with negotiations. That is my Money Monday spiel. If you have any stories on how you negotiated something amazing, any miscalculated negotiations where you ended up with like a raw deal, I have had that in the past. I'd like to hear about it and what you learned from it. If you just want to reach out to me, if you need advice on negotiations, please comment here. Follow me on Instagram, financial_sharktress. You can comment there. Over on my Facebook page, Financial Sharktress Galit Sadiq. In the group, Righteous Revenue Fishbowl. You can always contact me via email, galit@financialsharktris.com. And on YouTube now. So all of my Money Mondays are streamed live to YouTube. So you can catch this replay on YouTube or on all of the places that I just said. And I will speak to you soon. Have a great night, Sharks.